All right, now we go off to New York, where this week the Brooklyn District Attorney, Kenneth Thompson, announced new rules that would change the way his office prosecutes people for minor marijuana offenses. Now, under this new policy, people who are busted with small amounts of weed have little or no criminal record. Those folks will not even be prosecuted. The rule wouldn't apply to 16 and 17-year-old people with serious criminal backgrounds or people caught smoking in public areas or near kids. Now, Thompson says in most low-level marijuana possession cases, quote-unquote, obtaining a conviction against a defendant doesn't advance public safety with fairness, justice, and indeed might well sabotage that deal. Okay, first of all, anybody have a problem with what he's doing? I'll get to the, from the practice standpoint, from a policy standpoint, does it make sense what he's doing or no?
Practically, it makes sense. I think when you stop and you look at the cost of prosecuting these cases, especially in a place like Brooklyn, you're prosecuting thousands and thousands of marijuana cases. The cost becomes prohibitive. I have an issue with simply ignoring a law, but we do that all the time. I mean, New York State adultery is still on the books. Nobody gets prosecuted for adultery. There are a million other things that people just don't get prosecuted.
And how rude of me, by the way.
Mayo
Bartlett, Mayo Bartlett and Jimmy Kasouris to our right and left, respectively. Jimmy is criminal defense attorney, and the same thing for Mayo. Mayo used to be a former prosecutor as well in this. But okay, if we think that in the end it's not a good use to tie up the courts here and we're making low-level people, probably throwing the book at them when it'd be better served somewhere else. But what about the idea that Kings County can have one rule and Queens County can have a totally different rule? It doesn't, or all of a sudden Manhattan, Cy Vance wants to do something different.
But they do.
Really?
They do that all the time.
In practice, we're on the books.
Well, the Bronx, basically, in the Bronx, you don't get necessarily arrested. Within Westchester County, different courts handle it differently. You may get you get an ACD. Other courts say that they don't give it to you.
But help me out for my audience. Does that mean that some judge says, "All right, kid, go away," or is this a formal policy that if you get busted with a nickel bag in Kings County versus one in Richmond County, there's two different sets of rules? Because to me, that's some of the same things we make fun of states in this country about having crazy laws in the books. Now all of a sudden, forget about different states, you're doing it in different boroughs.
I have a problem with it, and you're absolutely right. You may get treated a little bit differently from county to county, but no one's getting in a lot of trouble from a marijuana arrest anywhere. You're going to get a marijuana ACD. You're not going to get a criminal record.
And
but
ACD is a misdemeanor.
An adjournment in contemplation of dismissal. What that means is you stay clean for 6 months or a year in a marijuana case, and it gets dismissed. It's a great disposition. It's appropriate. But for one DA to from the onset say we're not even arresting or prosecuting some people and then picking who gets prosecuted and who doesn't, whereas across the bridge you are getting prosecuted, you are going through the system, I don't think it's appropriate.
Well, the only thing though is that happens, let's say in Westchester County, where if you live in an affluent community, the police generally aren't going in your backyard to see if you're smoking marijuana. If they smell it burning, they're not going back there. If you live in a place where maybe you're on the street and someone can see you, you get arrested for marijuana. If it's in public view, it's a misdemeanor. But the one thing that we're losing is the fact that if you have a conviction for possession of marijuana, simple possession as an infraction, you can be denied federal funding for school. If you have a conviction for marijuana, you can be deported or you can be denied American citizenship. We represent people all the time who had a marijuana conviction without a lawyer, by the way, because the judge says it's not a misdemeanor, you don't need an attorney, so now it's you against the prosecutor and the judge. They don't bother to tell you about immigration consequences. It's just a $100 fine, so you think it's great. You pay it, and now 20 years later you want to become a citizen, and they say, oh no, possessing marijuana is a crime of moral turpitude. Even though all the other kids that lived in the United States and were citizens did the same thing, half of Congress, most of our recent presidents, but this person is going to be denied citizenship solely based on that.
There are already two different sets of rules in place because, and I've done a lot of reporting on this, New York City, with more marijuana arrests than any city in the world, somewhere close to 90% of those people who are being arrested and charged are black and Hispanic. So there are clearly two different rules based on who's being found in possession of it and how the police handle those individuals, and whether it's a matter of just an ACD and sort of getting them in and out of the system very quickly, or having their fingerprints and their information that's now put into the system. There are different rules already in place. I applaud the Brooklyn DA for this.
Richard, in my opinion, and I'm not counsel, but this is a good idea by the district attorney, the way that he's handling it. One, anyone that's been involved in a courtroom will tell you it's always at the discretion of the district attorney whether or not a case goes forward. And you can have two people charged with the same thing. One may go forward, one may not, simply because the district attorney wants to cut you a break or for whatever reason. But the reason why I like this, and you know I'm strongly against going public with marijuana and so on, because of the repercussions and what it does and so on, all those things. But the reason why I like this is because, one, you won't have a criminal record per se, but you're still going to spend possibly the weekend in jail. Yep. So it's a compromise. You're not just walking away for the most part. Now, some cases there are exceptions, but for the most part, you're still going to spend the weekend in jail. The police still have the discretion to make the arrest, even though they know that the district attorney won't prosecute.
I understand that, and don't get me wrong. I completely agree that the ramifications of a marijuana arrest or conviction are extreme, and they should be eliminated. But we have to also consider the fact that one DA is basically saying, I'm going to ignore a law while other DAs don't. Right. It's just not the right way to do it.
But that always happens. Not
on a wholesale basis.
Dominic, but not officially, but it happens every single day.
Dominic, when Robert Johnson said, I'm never going to sign
glad you
anything
brought up Robert
that
Johnson.
says that
there's some cases he won't prosecute, and other boroughs do.
When he came forward and said, I'm never going to impose a death penalty, he got called out on the carpet and almost lost his job. There are other ways to do this. I applaud the result. But the way of doing it, where a district attorney is allowed to say, I am now going to ignore laws on the books, and I'm going to delineate when they get ignored, who it applies to, who it doesn't apply to. And here's just the other question I want to throw out there. So today, this becomes reality. We've been yelling and screaming about this for 15 years. All of a sudden, today, putting people through the system with these ramifications sabotages justice. This is about money. This is about saving money. This is about we're not going to spend all of the money to do what we shouldn't have been doing.
I don't know about that. He ran on a platform. He ran on a platform, being elected the first person of color as district attorney in Brooklyn, of he was not going to prosecute these cases. So that's part of the reason why the people elected him.
I understand that, but again, to have an elected official who is duty-bound constitutionally to apply the laws, to turn around and say, I'm not going to apply this one. I want the result to happen. I just want it in a uniform way, and I want it done properly.
I guarantee you, if you guys, if one of these DAs said, I find Megan's law to be too onerous, and in my borough, we're not going to enforce some of the stipulations for distances and all the rest, I don't think the five of us would be saying apply. I just don't like when people freelance when there's a rule. Like, if you want to do it for the 5 boroughs, and this is under the guidance of the mayor, you're going to figure it out. But borough by borough, I don't know. I think he did a good thing, but I don't like the way he did it.
But it does happen. In every county, you'll have different counties. For instance, Megan's Law, you look at a DWI case or whatever it may be, a gun case. Different district attorney's offices will say, okay, fine, if you're double the legal limit, we're going to hold you as charged. Others don't. Some will say if you had an accident, you're held as charged. Others say, no, if no one got hurt, we're not going to hold you as charged.
That's a form of that boss, that DA, is deciding that he or she is going to have certain guidelines that his office will do. This is a wholesale formal declaration that no matter what, they're not going to do it. They could have done this and given themselves, by the way, I think some more discretion, some wiggle room here, but they chose not to. I'm just a little bit worried how he got there, not necessarily what he did. Okay, I want you folks at home to answer a question tonight. What do you think about the Brooklyn DA's new policy when it comes to marijuana prosecutions or lack thereof? Okay, when we come back, suing over snoozing. A Yankee fan says his reputation was damaged after, I probably shouldn't make any jokes, he'll sue me. After sports commentators and others made jokes about him on the air after he fell asleep for a good part of the game. Does this guy have a case? And wait till you see what he's suing for. Stay with us.